Chip, did you know that the Theophilus of Luke might be the high priest in Jerusalem?
Maybe.
Welcome to another Modern Mind Ancient Book. My name is Roger. I'll be your host today. I've got Chip with me. Chip, thanks for being here.
Hey, man, this is awesome.
Yeah, today we're actually going to address a survey-style teaching that we did about the Gospel of Luke. We need to amend it and discuss it a little further.
New stuff has come to light, y'all.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that new, but it's new, and it's interesting, and it's necessary to discuss. So, in 1984, there was an ossuary found with an inscription on it. The inscription said, Yehoḥanah, which is, what's the name mean?
Joanna?
Joanna, the daughter of Yehoḥanah. And who is Yehoḥanah?
John. But not the John we're thinking of.
No, and he's the son of Theophilus,
Yep.
the high priest of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty cool. Who's the son of Annas?
And there is a Joanna in the Bible, isn't there?
There certainly is. Married to Chusa.
Yep, and she was a wealthy patron who followed Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
She was of the Jewish aristocracy.
Yep. Technically married into an Herodian family.
Yeah, it looks like she was related to the high priest.
Yeah. Granddaughter.
Now, that being said, if that's true, what it does is it changes everything that I said when I did the survey style of the book of Luke, because Luke is a different person than scholars, for the most part, believe he is.
Right.
Okay, so the majority of this scholarship, just so we're, starting off on the right foot, is found out of work that's been completed in the land, in Israel, particularly among the academics in the land. It was kind of started by a gentleman named David Flusser,
right,
among other places, in Jerusalem, University of Jerusalem or something like that.
Right.
Now, those scholars are still there. They're still present. This has been going on. There are scholarly articles out there. It's been written about. This has been known since 1984. That's when this ossuary was found.
Right.
Now, it hasn't reached modern academic Christendom to the way that I would like it to.
Right, but it seems like the evidence is shifting with modern scholarship.
Well, yeah, because, we have to imagine that a Jewish movement would exist within the Jewish context in a Jewish world.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's pretty easy to land here because all through my college career, I was not necessarily taken in love with some of the theories that I found.
Right.
And Luke was one of them. So, please go back and watch the Gospel of Luke. We will link it to this show following this, and you can see how the arguments do change by comparing the two arguments as we go through. So the question here is who is Luke? Who is he really?
Right, and then we've got some options. We
do have some options. So, prevailing Christian scholarship calls him a Gentile. All right. Now, is he? The arguments to me were always weak. Okay, so you have in Colossians 4:10 through 14, Paul lists individuals of the circumcision.
Right.
And then it says, hey, Luke says hi.
Yeah.
So, reading that, I've never been convinced that means Luke is not of the circumcision.
It all has to do with how you break the thought between 13 and 14.
Yeah, it's just like Paul saying, hey guys, what's going on? Oh, Luke says hi too.
Yep, and so does Demas.
Yeah, that's the way I read that. So to me, that doesn't mean that he's Greek.
Yeah.
Right? So just a weird thing. And then you've got this argument noting that he has really good Koine Greek.
Well, if he was born in a diaspora community, he would speak Greek as fluently as, a Jewish man living in America would speak English.
Well, let's just talk about the political realities of the day. Rome took power. Israel, the nation, they were part and parcel with Rome's rise.
Yeah.
It all starts with the Maccabean revolt.
Right.
And Rome recognized Israel early.
Mm-hmm.
And
exploited them.
Yes. And Hellenization came under Alexander the Great and his generals following.
Mm-hmm.
So Israel was already speaking Greek a long time before Rome.
And there were even Greek cities, for example, the Decapolis.
Yes.
In the I wouldn't say in Israel proper, but up in what used to be the land of Dan, wasn't it, up there?
And Israel had protections in the nation, the Roman Empire.
Right, because they were able to be lucrative. Rome had a good racket going.
Well, and they were allowed to practice their religion no matter where they were.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't an issue for, I don't know, say for instance, a Hellenized Jew in the area of Corinth to be part of the Jewish aristocracy and have a business of sorts running in the family, and also be highly educated and write really good Greek.
Yep, this is in the very, very early throes of the Roman Empire. So we're talking early on before the imperial cult became a thing.
That's why the Rabbi Saul, whom we call Paul, had a Greek name from Tarsus.
Yep. Another highly educated Pharisee of Pharisees who lived in the diaspora.
Who was Hellenized.
Yep.
And had very good Greek.
Yep.
Okay. So, I think we would argue that it appears Luke is actually a Hellenized Jew.
That's my opinion.
Not Greek.
No, I mean, I don't know if we get into the details now or later some other time, but he has a very incredible command of the temple system, scripture, etc. And I know he used the Septuagint, but a Gentile would really have to be a scholar, and Luke's a physician.
Well, that's what made the ability to be Jewish in the Roman Empire so possible was the Septuagint.
Yep.
I mean, listen, there were lots of proselytes in the Roman Empire. Because Judaism had a carve-out, they could also take part, if they converted, in that carve-out and accurately practice the faith.
Yep.
And you see that there was a centurion that Peter was sent to.
Mm-hmm.
That was a proselyte.
Yep.
A Roman proselyte.
Yep.
In a position of power in the Roman Empire.
Yep. I think the thing that argues against proselyte for Luke is the fact that he has such a command. It'd be really difficult to go from Gentile to Jew, proselyte Jew, and have all that information and all that knowledge.
Yeah, if he did, he was a later convert. Okay, so using the Septuagint is not something against Luke or anybody. Jesus used the Septuagint. Most of the quotes in the New Testament are from the Septuagint. If you pursue Christian academic scholarship, it's more important for you to learn Greek than it is Hebrew.
Right.
Because the majority of the documents, all of the documents that we have now, unless it's in Latin, were written in Greek. There's only a few Aramaic fragments.
Right.
All right. So here we are with this Luke, who has just absolute command of Jewish theology. And you're right, him being a proselyte would be a challenge. Because
it's believable, but it's hard to believe.
Well, if that's the case, he was just a very brilliant person who learned very, very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question is if Theophilus is the Jewish high priest, why would he entertain a letter from a guy who can't even go into the inner court?
Yeah, exactly.
He's just not welcome.
Yep.
I mean, try now. I challenge you, any of you Gentiles today, right? Any of you folks out there, go to a Jewish synagogue and try to get in tight with the rabbi without being Jewish and without converting, and see how well that goes for you. It's a very tight-knit culture.
Yep.
It's not a culture that just welcomes outsiders in.
And so in the converse to that is, if Theophilus is not the high priest and he's some random low-ranking Roman official, why would Luke be writing to him at all? Hard to say.
Yeah, so I did some papers on this, and when we did the previous survey, I noted that there is some explanation for this, but it's by far the weakest, and we're going to get to that a little bit later. So let me just quickly answer this. Why would Luke be writing to a Roman official? Well, it's getting hot in the empire. Rome is quickly turning against Israel, against Jerusalem mainly, because of kind of madness, right?
Yeah,
like they want to cast off the rule of Rome. And so this, if that's who Luke is a Gentile, he's writing to someone in Corinth, someone in power. It's Batea, or I can't remember the name of the place, that understand that we're not a threat to you, right? So, okay, I got it. But there's a particular word set of hakodama. So I don't understand why he would be telling this Roman authority about Aramaic, if that's the case.
And the Roman authority would be a Latin Greek speaker.
Yeah, it is the least sensical thing, okay? So modern scholarship generally dates Luke, Acts during or slightly before, slightly after the temple falls, okay? And it continue. The debate is what's his purpose, right? So, is it partially apologetic? Is it portraying Christianity as a legitimate movement within both the Jewish and the Roman world? Is that the purpose of it? Okay, right. Is he trying to show Roman authorities that this movement doesn't matter because he talks about how Paul was declared innocent in Acts in numerous locations, or are those noted because that is how the Roman authorities taught or thought about Jesus when Pontius Pilate washed his hands? Right.
I'm not even certain that the Roman authorities, the further away you get from the Holy Land, the Levant, would even be aware of the or care about the inner workings.
Well, no, because it was just a sect of Judaism.
Yeah, exactly.
They had protections. The argument was within the Jewish community.
Yep.
And that's why this makes the most sense, and that's what I'm getting at, right? So it doesn't make sense that this is written to a Gentile ruler, because the question here is Theophilus, do you see that the Romans are still treating us exactly the same? They don't find a problem with what we believe, but you guys crucified Jesus, right? So that argument doesn't make a whole bunch of sense to me. I think that Luke was written really, really early, and I think that Acts was written a lot later, that it was to the same man but with a different heart, okay? So, what's the biblical evidence for this? So both the Gospel of Luke and Acts are formally addressed to a man named Theophilus. The prologue of Luke reads, "I decided, after investigating everything carefully from the very first, to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus." Now, it's important to note that Acts opens up with direct continuation. "In my former book, Theophilus, I wrote about all that Jesus began to do and teach." In my former book. I'm going to argue that these are two separate writings to the same person, because that's what it appears to say. The first one has a title associated, most excellent Theophilus. In my mind, and based on what I understand about ancient documents, particularly those that are addressed to people in office, Luke was written to somebody in office, and Acts was written to somebody who was not in office, but needed more information for a reason.
Right.
Now, there's that important difference, okay? So Theophilus has a different title associated with him. The name Theophilus is of Greek origin. Now, this is what throws scholars off, and I think it's because of lack of understanding, to be honest with you, okay? So, it's two different words, okay? Theophilus. And it means lover of God or friend of God. Now, for this reason, it became a popular name among Hellenized Jews, okay? So it's a name that Jewish people would take because it points to their origin, to their reason for existence, for the desire of their heart, right? But also of Greeks.
Yep, and it's not the first time a high priest has had a Greek name. Think about Jason back during the Maccabean period.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at earlier, right? Like, Greek is common. It's called Koine Greek for a reason. Common Greek, right? So now Christian scholars, and this is what I'm saying about lack of understanding in this, if we just take the principled fact that Jesus was a Jewish sage in the first century, a teacher, a rabbi, and his movement continued on as a form of Judaism, then it's not hard to understand that this is a Jewish movement.
Right.
And that we should imagine it within a Jewish context.
Yep.
So if that's the case, then that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and in this particular case, if Theophilus is the high priest and the gospel is being written to him as an explanation of the facts surrounding Jesus Christ's walk through Judea, That makes a lot of sense. If you're the high priest, wouldn't you want to know what in the world is going on?
Well, and he's the high priest in a family, and we're going to get to that, but there's a whole philosophical and theological and political reality associated with Theophilus.
Yep.
That has to be addressed. And the fact is he was softer than the previous versions of him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The former high priests were not the same as Theophilus.
Right.
So we'll get to that in just a second. But that title is important, okay? So Luke addressed this Theophilus as most excellent Theophilus, okay? So Christe Theophili, okay? Now, the same title appears elsewhere in Acts when addressing Roman governors, Felix and Porcius Festus.
Right.
In Greco-Roman usage, Kratiste was an honorific title reserved for men of high rank or official standing. This has led many scholars to conclude that Theophilus may have been a Roman official, a wealthy patron, a person of significant social status. That being said, because of this ossuary, what's an ossuary?
It's a box of bones.
It's a box of bones. After the body had sufficiently decayed, the family would return to where the body was placed and then place the bones into a box.
Yep.
And that box is called an ossuary.
And then they would usually put it in a family tomb of some variety,
tomb, that's
or catacomb or something.
If you were tied to aristocratic families, then your bones would go to the place of collection for the family. That's important to note because we're going to talk about that in a little bit too. Okay? So we knew, scholars knew that this was some sort of official person. Okay? Now, before 1984, there was no inkling, no understanding at all that a Jewish person might have the name Theophilus.
Right.
But the fact that that's been found and it's associated with the Jewish high priest, well, now we know it could be.
Yeah, now that we also know that it's possible that the author Luke was also a Jew.
Yes. Potentially. Okay, so, we argue that the honorific title was also used for Jewish aristocrats, particularly members of the high priestly elite, okay? So, was Theophilus a Roman official or a high priest? That's kind of where we have to do this, okay? So now, the widely accepted view identifies Theophilus as a Greek or Roman patron, okay? And this interpretation is supported by several observations. And this is what we had in the previous survey for this. That Luke explains Jewish customs. His Greek style is refined and literary, and that he situates events within broader Roman political history. So under this view, Theophilus may have been a recent convert to Christianity, a God-fearer interested in Judaism, and a Roman administrator seeking an evaluation of the Christian movement. Now, this is where, in that survey episode of Luke, I was like, I guess it could be, but I need to write a paper on this.
Right.
Because this is not the strongest argument for me. Now, Acts' repeated emphasis on Christianity's political innocence may suggest that Luke intended to reassure a Roman reader that the movement posed no threat to imperial stability. Coptic tradition states that Theophilus was a Jew from Alexandria. Mm-hmm. Okay, so early traditions see him as a Jewish man.
Yeah.
Okay, now, could he have been close to Alexandria? Sure, he could have traveled all over.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If they had a Jewish family and they were in office, it's likely that may be the case.
Right.
Okay, but the earliest traditions have him in the area of Corinth. And the area of Corinth is also the area where Paul went to.
Right.
And Paul also is tied to the aristocracy of Jerusalem because he was taught under one of the greatest rabbis that ever existed, Gamaliel.
Right.
And he was a high-ranking Pharisee.
And he was a Roman citizen. Not that usual.
Now, let's talk about the high priest Theophilus. His office dates 37 to 41.
Yep, he's in a long line of the sons of Annas, or Annas, depending on how you want to say his name.
The very high priest that with Caiaphas had Jesus crucified.
Yeah.
Right? So Caiaphas was high priest at the time. So Jesus is brought to Annas, and then Jesus is brought to Caiaphas.
Right.
And Caiaphas makes the determination that he should die.
Right.
But first he was brought to Annas.
Right. Annas is running the temple. Even though he's not in office, he's done a number on the Roman authorities, and he's the power behind the scenes for the temple authority. He's the head of what I consider a grand crime family.
That's right. So what we're proposing is that Theophilus is a historical Jewish high priest, and that this box that was discovered in Israel that says Yehoḥanah, Joanna, daughter of John, son of Theophilus, the high priest, confirms that, okay? And on the box, this is written in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek.
Yep.
Why?
Well, because those are the three languages that the people would have been able to look at the box and read and write.
That's right. And I want to really labor this, okay? Hebrew, the language of the aristocrats.
Right.
Right? Of the Jewish authorities, of the religious temple authorities. Greek, the language of business, commerce, and administration. That's the political language. Aramaic, the language of the diaspora, of the exile, of the common people. The people who were taken into captivity to Babylon and let loose by the Persians spoke Aramaic. When Israel came back from captivity, they spoke Aramaic. Aramaic is the language of the captors.
Yep.
Okay. Now, Jesus spoke Aramaic.
Yep.
Because he was from the backwoods of Israel.
Yeah, Galilee.
From Galilee. They even had different traditions.
Different accents, too.
This is also something that was a point of consternation for the Jewish religious authorities. They were administrating and running their nation in concert with the blessing of Rome, and they understood that Rome could, and will come against and destroy the nation if they are not obedient.
Well, yeah, and I mean, wasn't Rome pretty much picking these high priests? I mean, if you look at the Old Testament, the high priest was supposed to be a lifetime appointment.
Yeah, the high priest starting with Alexander the Great coming through.
Yeah,
were all picked by the authorities.
Yep.
Because they were ruling authority of the people. They were supposed to be respected by the people, right? They were the ones who held sway. I can tell you this, the Romans took the high priestly garments and did not let them hold on to them, except for when it became time for the Day of Atonement, they would receive them if they did good.
And anytime there was money to be made, Passover also.
Yes. So here's the reality. To Jewish authorities, backwoods Aramaic-speaking people who wanted to overthrow Rome, they did not know what they were doing.
Yep.
They were looked down upon as those who were taken into exile, who lost the truth, and now need to be taught the truth, and it could only be taught to them by the Jewish authorities.
Right, and if you want to talk about a cup of trembling, around these times the Zealots didn't necessarily agree. They were gaining strength because of that very arrogant, condescending attitude by the ruling Jewish Sadduceans.
And the Essenes.
Yep.
Right? So you had these two sects, of which John the Baptist was an Essene.
Yep.
And Simon a Zealot. I mean, Jesus collected all these people.
He did.
Now, it's important, just keep that in the back of your mind, that Aramaic was seen as something that was spoken by people who did not understand.
Country bumpkins, boy.
Yep. Okay, so this inscription doesn't tell us for sure. So let's just be fair that this Joanna is the Joanna that's related to the high priest that we find in the Bible, right? Like, we can't necessarily prove this, but it's kind of hard to imagine that there was any other Theophilus that a Hellenized Jew was writing to, who was tied to Paul, who was tied to the temple authorities, him being a Hellenized rich Jewish man tied to the temple authorities, Joanna tied to the temple authorities, James, the brother of Jesus, at the temple all the time, known and respected by the temple authorities.
Yeah, and also the chain of command from Theophilus down to Joanna, there's a man in the middle, her father, his son.
Yeah.
And all that's on the ossuary, I believe, right?
Yes.
So in other words, what are the odds that there's a Theophilus who has a son named John who has a daughter named Joanna? It's really hard to imagine
it doesn't make a whole bunch of sense.
Unless this is the path.
So this is the genealogy here, okay? Annas, that's the man who crucified Jesus. Eleazar, Caiaphas, that's the actual high priest at the time that gave the order.
Yep, his son-in-law.
Following that is Jonathan, who ruled for a very short time. That's Theophilus' brother,
right?
Not his son.
One of them.
One of his brothers.
Yep.
And by this point, Annas was very, very old.
Yep, and he still had his hands on the temple because all of his sons would be high priests, all 5 of them.
But Theophilus was beginning to be a little different than his than his predecessors. During Theophilus' time as the high priest, and this is a fact, he was a little more relaxed with the followers of the Nazarenes.
Yeah, you can almost fill in the blanks. He's got his granddaughter, who might have been his beloved granddaughter, is a follower of Jesus.
Yeah, the little girl that he held and cherished and honored and married off.
And loves.
Certainly
is plausible.
Yeah. Okay, so now Theophilus was high priest in 37 to 41. He was the son of Annas, the elder, patriarch of the powerful priestly dynasty that dominated Jerusalem politics for decades. His family included Caiaphas, who was there at Jesus' trial in John 18, who was his brother-in-law. They were all part of the Sadducees, the ruling class. He was appointed when Lucius Vitellius was governor of Syria, who appointed Theophilus chief priest while he visited Jerusalem in Passover in 37 AD. Another Greek name that was going to Passover.
Yep.
Theophilus took the place of his brother Jonathan ben Annas, the son of Annas, right? Who was murdered by instigation of the prefect Felix.
Yeah, Felix said, here we go again. The Romans are meddling in Jewish temple chain of command.
Yep. See Josephus Antiquities, chapter 20, verse 5. Okay? So the Annas family wielded immense political and economic power and was closely aligned with Roman authorities. Rabbinic tradition criticizes certain priestly families of the era for corruption and abuse of authority. During the first century, the family, under the headship of Annas, wielded the high seat of high priest for 36 years, up until the destruction of the temple. Annas ben Seth served officially as high priest for 10 years, 86 to 15, when at the age of 36 he was deposed by the procurator Valerius Gratus, another Roman authority. Yet while having been officially removed from office, he remained as one of the nation's most influential political and social individuals. He was aided greatly by the fact that his 5 sons and his son-in-law Caiaphas all served as some time as high priest. This is why Caiaphas served as high priest, because of Roman interdiction.
Yep.
Now, if Luke addressed this high priest, his gospel may represent a carefully reasoned appeal to the highest level of Jewish leadership. It would explain certain parts of Luke's contents. Luke commences with Zacharias' vision in the temple. See, he's speaking to it already,
right? And Zacharias was a Levite, correct?
Yes. Yeah. A temple authority. During his tenure, he was a righteous priest and the father of John the Baptist. See, and this is the other thing. John the Baptist is tied to the temple.
Yeah.
Right? All these people are tied to the temple.
Yep.
Jesus is in that line that's tied to the temple. He records Mary's purification in the temple. He records rituals in the temple. He records Jesus' debating with the priest in the temple at 12. It's probable that Annas, his father, was chief priest at the time and was also familiar with the story. The temple figures a great deal in Luke's gospel and the book of Acts. Luke reports the number of priests who rapidly became believers. Luke reports that the believers constantly worshiped in the temple following Jesus' death. Luke does not mention Caiaphas' involvement in the trial of Jesus. Could he have been sensitive, not to create a family conflict, especially if he was trying to change his mind.
Perhaps.
Luke does, though, emphasize Jesus' resurrection from the dead, a theology that the Sadducees did not believe, but was a doctrine held by the majority.
Right. The Pharisees were the ones actually running the rabbinical system, not the temple, and the Pharisees believed in resurrection of the dead. That's a pretty interesting difference there.
That's right.
Yeah, you've got the rabbis out teaching one thing and the high priest saying, no, that's not true.
Now let's talk about Joanna. Joanna appears prominently in Luke 8:3. Joanna, the wife of Chusa, steward of Herod Antipas, supports Jesus' ministry. And why was she against her husband?
He apparently was parading a concubine or an adulteress. We don't really know who she was, but he had another woman, and he made no secret about it.
She was betrayed by a corrupt system.
And publicly humiliated by this Herodian. You got to think she comes from a line of Sadducees. There's some rivalry there.
Joanna is also one of the women who was discovered at the empty tomb.
Yep.
Joanna's husband Chusa served as Herod Antipas's administrator, placing her within elite political circles. If she were connected to the high priest family, it would explain her access to both Herodian and Jerusalem aristocracy. The name Joanna was common, so identification remains speculative, but it's hard to imagine it's anybody else.
Well, especially with the ossuary. That's what ties it all in for me. It's a total game changer for me on who Luke may have been.
The Department of Antiquities and Museums acquired in 1984 an inscribed ossuary of outstanding interest. The ossuary is made in limestone, and half of the flat lid is preserved. On the front of the ossuary is engraved an arcade of 3 archive composed of vertical lines and pointed leaves inside of a rectangular frame. The decoration was executed with a rule and compass. The craftsmanship is poor. In the central arch is engraved an Aramaic inscription in 3 lines. Yehoḥanah, daughter of Yehoḥanah, son of Theophilus the high priest. The ossuary was seen in Jerusalem. The ossuary is seen in Jerusalem Antiquities Market in the summer of 1983 and is said to have been found in Hisma, a small village northeast of Jerusalem. It was located in a rock-cut tomb of 1st century Jewish culture. She was not buried with her family.
Nope.
Is that a strike against her?
I don't think so. Actually,
against the box?
I don't think it's a strike against the box. My thought is, okay, imagine this. You're the high priest. The whole family are running the temple.
You're of the high priest family that killed this man.
Right, they're running the temple. They are literally profiting from the sacrificial system by money laundering and by selling animals to people that are bringing animals to be sacrificed. And so the point is, they're Sadducees, and here's the black sheep of the family following the good shepherd. I mean, would she be buried with him?
Well, let's go back to the political realities of the day. If you, and this is still true today, become a follower of Jesus, and there are a number of Jewish people's families that would just write them off forever.
Yep.
That's what happened.
That's what I think happened.
That's exactly what happened. Joanna was written off. The fact that the box says a family member of the high priest, and she's not in the right place where that box should be, tells you this is probably Joanna who followed Jesus.
Right. That's what I think.
Which places Luke writing to the high priest between 37 and 41.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the earliest gospel.
That certainly looks that way.
So the connection between Theophilus and Joanna poses some difficulty due to ages and dating. Luke recorded that Joanna was married to a high-ranking official when she joined Jesus' group of followers, which made some scholars suggest that she wasn't the right age, right? That she would have been too old. But too old at 16 years old? I mean, we crunched some of these numbers.
Yeah, we did, and they do add up.
Yeah, that's not too old.
We don't know how old Theophilus was. We don't know how old his son John was.
Well, you have to be a minimum of 40 years old to be a high priest.
Right.
So,
and the Romans are interfering with the appointment of priests, and Annas is trying to keep his mafia gig going because he's literally profiting from the temple system. So who knows how old Theophilus was when he actually assumed the high priesthood. He was presumably in the Sanhedrin before he became high priest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he was following, I would call it Levitical law, but I'm not certain what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what we figured. The Annas was, 54, 55 years old when Jesus was crucified, which means that, Theophilus, he would have been
At
almost
40,
90
right? Yeah,
when Theophilus came out of power.
Totally believable.
Totally reasonable.
Yeah, totally reasonable.
Okay. If Theophilus were the high priest, there's several things that follow. Luke would be addressing a highly educated Jewish aristocrat who would have been addressed as most excellent. Fair.
Yep.
The difference of Luke's address in the book of Acts could indicate that the latter was presented after Theophilus had vacated the high priest office. Both the gospel and the book of Acts might have functioned as an apologetic toward Jewish leadership. Why? And Paul tells us exactly why. There's a zeal for his people.
Yep.
They want people to repent. They want Jewish people to turn and see. And why? Because the temple was about to fall.
Right, and there's another angle here that just occurred to me. Okay, so imagine this. It's 41 AD, and Theophilus is no longer the high priest. He's given it up to the next person, who I think was Mattathias.
Yeah.
So where does Theophilus go? Does he go on a cruise ship and head to Jamaica?
Oh, no, he's absolutely present.
He has a seat in the Sanhedrin, right?
Yeah.
And he's already received the gospel.
Yes.
So the Acts could be presented to someone who's sitting in the Sanhedrin as a way to prove that Paul and James, the brother of Jesus, and Peter and John, they aren't, they're still in Judaism.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes total sense.
Yeah, Theophilus, listen, and what happened to Theophilus? Why was he taken out of power?
Yeah, well, probably the Romans were meddling again, but I don't know.
So this is the way I see it, okay? So something bad happened. And I think I have something here to discuss a little bit about potential, but this is a softened Theophilus who sees the difficulties associated in the political world with right belief and with coming to the truth and being influential and experiencing being ousted out of power.
Right.
And now Luke is trying one more time because he's a dear friend of his. He knows him and he loves him.
Yep.
That's the way I see these documents.
Yeah, that's plausible too.
So, if Joanna, mentioned in Acts, was his granddaughter, then Theophilus could have had a personal as well as religious interest. The Christian, or the sect of the Nazarenes, a form of Judaism, movement would have already begun to have a considerable impact on Jewish society in Judea and abroad by the time of his tenure as high priest. Luke's detailed knowledge of temple rituals and priestly customs could reflect that he was writing to the Jewish religious elite. And this is why I don't think he was a proselyte.
Oh, no, I don't either. I'm convinced he was a diaspora Jew who was highly educated.
Yeah, he knows too much.
And what's happening inside the actual Jewish faith, not the sect of the Nazarene. Think about all the people that are probably seeing Christianity, and I'm using that term even though we're proto-Christian here. They're literally watching people like Paul, the Pharisee of Pharisees. They've already lost Nicodemus, Joseph of Arimathea, and a whole host of other Pharisees. Remember, we're talking about Judaizing later on, where they're arguing about.
Luke's reaching into the Sadducees.
Yeah,
right
I think this is a way to get into the Sanhedrin to say, hey, here's what's going on. In other words, you guys need to see the light.
Yeah.
This is a presentation in Acts. I'm talking about it's a presentation of. Here's what we're doing. We're not outside the bounds of Judaism, and here's why it's happening. And he's writing to someone who's got a seat in the Sanhedrin.
And the troubles are, the heat is getting
Oh,
on.
dude, the Zealots, this is the period of time where the Zealots are starting to attack everybody.
Yeah.
The Sicaros they kill Christians, Greeks, Romans, Sadducees, Pharisees, anyone who's not religiously pure enough. This is when this is starting. They're really ramping up.
And the sect of the Nazarenes is reaching out in Jesus' name, saying, come on, guys, please, we got to change.
Yeah.
Reasonable.
Yeah, to me it is.
This is the way of Jesus. This is the way.
Yep. And
mercy in the middle of trial.
Right, because guess what's coming?
Now, there's no mention of the destruction of the temple.
That's what's coming.
Yeah, which I believe points to this early writing for both of these cases.
I agree.
We landed on Luke and Acts being in 64, but I don't think so. I think Luke was written between 37 and 41, probably more like 38, 37, 39. And I think Acts was written later, around 64. I think it was kind of the final one.
Yeah, probably because Paul was already in Rome, at the end of Acts. Yeah.
60, 62.
And plus Luke traveled with Paul. We know that.
Yes. So in Acts 9:31 we read, so the church throughout all Judea and Galilee and Samaria had peace and was built up. And this is because of Theophilus. Theophilus relaxed. He wasn't such a persecutor. Because he wasn't under so much pressure from his father Annas.
Right, and what does it say about the way in Acts 9:3-1?
Yeah.
And walking in the fear of the Lord and in the comfort of the Holy Spirit, it was multiplied.
It was multiplying because Theophilus was relaxed.
Yep.
It is generally accepted that this period of peace and growth took place in the late 30s and early 40s. It possibly indicates that Theophilus brought a different kind of spiritual leadership and encouraged this time of peace. Did this moment spur Luke to write Theophilus to explain the history and background to the burgeoning church? Because he had connections.
Yeah.
Through Joanna, through Paul, through his family history.
And through his profession.
He was
a physician of high talent, apparently.
In the first century Judea, it was widely known, or at least strongly alleged, that the assassination of Theophilus' brother was carried out by the Sicarii, a radical Jewish faction known for political murders. See, he was occupied with something else, right? And that act occurred within the broader climate of instability that marked the procuratorship of Felix. The Sicarii were notorious for concealing small daggers known as sicae beneath their garments and carried out targeted killings in crowded public spaces, particularly during festivals in Jerusalem. Their actions contributed significantly to the atmosphere of fear and political violence of the period. According to Josephus Flavius in the Antiquities of the Jews, chapter 28 and 5 and 29 and 3, the high priest Jonathan was murdered through a plot linked to Felix. Josephus explicitly suggests that Felix, frustrated by Jonathan's criticism of his administration, arranged for assassins to eliminate him. If Theophilus was indeed Jonathan's brother, as many scholars propose, then this event would not have been merely political, but deeply personal. Against this background, Luke portrayed Felix in Acts 24. Luke's portrayal of Felix in Acts 24 takes an added significance. He talks to him as a bad man, about a bad man.
Yep.
Luke recorded Felix's willingness to delay justice if he received a bribe from Paul.
Yeah.
It presents Felix as corrupt, self-interested, and morally bankrupt. He's playing a political game.
Well, yeah, he's out in the hinterlands. His plan is to go back to Rome and live up the high life, just like Pontius Pilate and any other governor would have been. These guys were out in the empire. They would go home after their term of service, so they'd be rich.
Yeah, they just needed...
Kind of like politicians today that go in and never don't make any money and come out being billionaires.
Felix just wanted it to be his way. And Jonathan wasn't allowing that to be. Now, Theophilus doesn't have the power to do anything about Felix, but Luke is smart, so he's writing to him in a way that would be endearing to Theophilus. And it fits that he's writing to the actual high priest Theophilus.
Yep, I agree.
Christiste, the most excellent. It's an honorific title for someone in office. While Luke's account focused on an event in the life of Paul, its inclusion may have also served a subtle rhetoric purpose. Theophilus, who would have already associated Felix with his brother's death, this exposure of Felix's corruption would have potentially resonated with him, adding a level of sympathy for Paul, because Felix is the one who caused all this trouble for Paul. He might have been writing to help Paul. Although this could be an overstatement, the convergence of historical circumstances make the connection compelling, which means that it's written later too. So it could be early, could be later, right? Maybe Paul's in prison and he's writing both of these documents, as we discussed earlier, trying to get the help. But that wouldn't work.
No, but I mean, the thing that makes all of this start to come together, this is modern scholarship and it's still being developed. But I mean, think about what we've got going on here. I mean, this is even in Josephus. In Josephus, I mean, Wasn't he captured after the fall of the temple? Wasn't he in the revolt and everything?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. He kind of.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he wrote the history. I mean, he is noticing these things.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So Theophilus remains one of the New Testament's most intriguing figures for a lot of reasons. Okay, the Annas dynasty, Theophilus associated with it. Women such as Joanna moved within elite Herodian and priestly circles, right? So this is where kind of Jesus... Now this is the other thing, and I want Christians to understand this. Jesus wasn't just a backwoods teacher.
No, he was God walking in creation. That's sort of important to point out.
Well, fair, but I wasn't going there. What I was saying is he's tied to the political structure.
Yeah.
He was actually a high-ranking official in this world. He also was involved to some degree, greater or lesser, in the political realities of this world. He understood full well what he was doing, and he understood how to navigate the world.
Right.
And when he moves from Galilee over to, when he moves from why am I thinking of the Bethlehem?
Right.
No, where did he move in his latter ministry?
You're talking about Bethany?
Bethany. He moved to another city because it was on the opposite side of the guy who wanted to kill him.
Right.
I mean, he was completely aware of the world around him, and they were completely aware of him. And his family was tied to temple authorities because they were part of the temple family. Okay, so he's more than we imagine he is. Let's just put it that way. So whether Roman official or Jewish aristocrat or literary patron, Theophilus stands at the crossroads of early Christianity. Now, one more thing I want to point out about this. What this does for us is it firmly places Christianity, early Judaism, the sect of the Nazarene, as something that has a certain, Jesus said, right? Forgive them for they know not what they do.
Right.
It's very consistent with our belief system. Forgive those even when they're trying to harm you. Reach out to them even when they hate you. Love your enemies, which is what Luke was doing to the very Jewish high priest of the day. So it fits so well.
Yeah, it does.
Now, Luke being who he was and Paul being who they were, this also sets something else in plain reality, okay? That generation will be held accountable. God gave every single opportunity in the world to recognize who Jesus was.
Yep.
Without fail.
Well, interestingly enough, the Sadducees don't survive this.
No, they don't. They're gone.
They get eliminated completely out of the record after 70 AD.
In a form of the religion of the Pharisees exists today in rabbinic Judaism.
Yeah, so you lose the Sadducees, you lose the Essenes, and you really lose the Zealots. Those guys went down in flames, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's a super interesting thing, okay? So here's the chronology, okay? 6 to 15, Annas holds office. 6 to 17, Eleazar holds office. 18 to 36, Caiaphas holds office. Caiaphas was very concerned about Rome.
Right.
Which is why Jesus was killed.
Right.
It was all about political realities in this day. Caiaphas knew the dangers of Rome, and he knew the dangers of being disobedient and having a disorganized system. He made it the longest because he understood that. In his mind, he was doing what was best for the nation by stomping out what he saw as threats to stability.
Yeah, and he also had his father-in-law saying, "Hey, buddy, don't we don't ruin what we got going here."
Well, Annas also held a fairly decent tenure, 6 to 15, whereas Eleazar did not, 6 to 17.
Yeah.
So Annas learned some lessons.
Yeah.
And he made sure that Caiaphas understood them.
Yep.
Okay. Now we get to Jonathan. Jonathan only made it 1 year.
Right. Well, that's because good old Felix had him assassinated. Yeah.
Done.
Well, had him assassinated.
Died it.
Yeah.
Right.
Offed. Rubbed out. This is very mafia-like.
It is not the way the Bible us Israel to be.
Absolutely not.
Now you get spring of 37, Theophilus. Okay? Good. All of it matches up. All of it's good. So this is where Joanna fits. Joanna died after her grandfather's nomination of high priest in spring of 37. The authors think she was probably unmarried, so she left.
Right, that's what they say.
Yeah.
Yep.
Since the inscription identifies her father and grandfather rather than her husband.
Right.
You know what I think?
I think she was a Sadducee and the Herodian was cheating on her. That's what I think.
And they ousted her from the family and he gave up on her because he was already cheating on her.
Yep. Good
Just
old
done.
Chusa. Yep.
You're out of here.
That's exactly what I think.
Yeah. Most importantly, the article says the mention of her grandfather's high office suggests that she was probably, she wasn't buried in the family tomb. So here's the closing argument for us. Jesus was from a priestly house. The Acts are all about the first Christians' persecution and how and what it was for this sect of the Nazarenes to grow and how they existed in the shadow of the temple and how they used and lived within the context of the temple. No, Jesus didn't turn away from Judaism at all.
Right.
Nor did his followers. Now, what we do have is that the early church had its place in politics.
Yep.
And this is worth noting that Israel was still a very important part of the beginning of the sect that was associated with Jesus.
Yeah.
There was worship there, there was hope there was a desire there. The temple was very important because the presence of God was there.
Yeah, the center of the sect of the Nazarene, the way, was in Jerusalem, obviously, and spread out like a dandelion getting blown on. I mean, that's pretty clear. Because think about where Paul and Luke and Timothy and John Mark and all these people, they keep going back to, where are they sending money to? It's all going back to Jerusalem, where I see John and James, the brother of Jesus, and Peter still ensconced.
And it had its negative version of its place in politics. They were talking about, thinking about, and desiring for this sect to end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Except for Theophilus was a little softer. Not a lover of the way.
Right. I think he was just trying to understand what he was dealing with, and I do believe he softened. You know, I'm not convinced that he didn't die a follower, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, maybe he did. But you see with James that there was a continuity of hostility.
Yeah.
Because he was murdered.
Yeah.
So Annas the Younger became the high priest in 62 for 3 months. 3 months. He inherited from his father a highly negative approach to Jesus and his followers. Josephus records that he convened judges and he had James murdered. And why did he have James stoned? For no reason.
Well,
everybody in the temple appreciated, he was respected by, but this family, and this is the reason why it's important to see this letter to Theophilus and the desire to reach out, because there had been wrong over wrong over wrong. It fits the Christian desire that they were trying still to get something positive for the people before the fall of the temple.
Right, and if you know about what else was happening in the countryside here, and I'm not talking about the zealots, I'm talking about the average person that was coming to Jerusalem with an animal for the feast system, invariably this family, the Ananias's racket is what I call it, they had animals to sell and you had to use temple coinage to buy it, and the Romans were getting a cut of the temple coinage. I can see James and the earlier followers of the way complaining about that, saying, what are you doing to the people?
Yeah, the same way Jesus did.
You know,
and
it's
business.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, hey man, you know, let's get rid of these complainers so we can keep going with this. Otherwise the Romans are going to not get their cut and they're going to do us in.
After Theophilus, the violence continues.
Yeah,
right? Honest.
It just gets worse.
Yeah,
because now the zealots are running amok.
Yeah. So and listen to what happened to Theophilus later. In 65, Matthias, son of Theophilus, Joanna's uncle, became high priest. Under Matthias, son of Theophilus, the war of the Jews with Rome began. After him, the zealots appointed Phinehas, a man not of high priest.
Right, and he was the last high priest of Jerusalem. After that, it was curtains.
To me, this says that God was reaching out to the lover of God to make a change.
Yep.
And because it didn't change, his line was cut off.
Yep. I agree with that. And it's really hard for me to tell whether or not some of them did change because they're not recorded. You know, I believe that there was a whole stream of people of the faith, and I'm talking about of Judaism, following the way. And, you know, I mean, literally following Jesus. You know, it's interesting to me that the Pharisees and the Christians survived the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Yeah. You know, they survived because they were out in the countryside and they were spreading, and it's really interesting to me. The modern rabbinical system did not die when the temple fell. You know, the message was out in the diaspora.
I want to be fair to rabbinic Judaism right now, okay? Because we look at it as negative, but what we're missing is like a 2-day period. Yeah. We don't see Jesus' death as positive. Well, they don't see Jesus' death as positive, and they don't see his resurrection as true.
Right.
But the content, if you really read these documents, it's just not that far away.
Right. Well, that was what I was trying to point at, is that God's hand saved both forms of believers in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the Pharisees and the rabbis weren't wiped out when this happened. They were able to go on, and Judaism is now, almost 4,000 years old.
Did you know that the rabbinic form of Judaism is why we have our form of worship?
Yeah, the synagogue. You're talking about the synagogue and everything.
They had it outside of the temple, and people went to a particular place for worship. Yep. And so we have it, originally we had it on Saturday, and then dinners on Sunday. Yep. They called them love feasts. Mm-hmm. Now we just go to church on Sunday, and hopefully we're celebrating something to do with God's creation on Friday night with your family and friends. Please, I beg you in Jesus' name. There's such a blessing in recognizing God every week for what he's done for you on Friday night. Yep. And then what Jesus and God are, the new hope, the new future, and the coming kingdom on Sunday. You can do both.
You sure can.
Do both. Okay, so let's go to the point of this, okay? We're going to boil it down. The ossuary gives us a named granddaughter of a real high priest named Theophilus. Okay? That's true.
True.
The article situates her inside the house of Annas, the same family tied to Jesus' trial in Acts 4 and James's death. The burial details suggest Joanna was probably not laid in the aristocratic family tomb, though the reason is unknown, but we know what the reason is.
We think we do.
She was taken out of her marriage, she was thrown away, and she was thrown away from her family life because she followed Jesus. That makes it reasonable to speak of tension, guarded tolerance, which was what Theophilus gave, or loss of standing more than open acceptance. Okay, so all of these things are true. There was tension with the family, there was guarded tolerance by Theophilus, and she lost her standing. The result is a sharper picture of the early church, that it was Jewish, that it was public, that it was politically entangled, and that it was opposed by a durable priestly dynasty all the way up until the temple was finally sacked and destroyed.
Exactly as Jesus called it.
Exactly as Jesus called it. So, my original survey of Luke was wrong. I knew I was uncomfortable with it at the time, but now I totally reject that survey. Paul was not a Gentile, and it was not written to a Gentile audience.
You talking about Luke?
Yes. Is that what I said?
Well, you said Paul.
Did I say Paul?
You like to say Paul.
You
do.
Meant Luke. I love to say Paul.
I know you do.
Yeah. So Luke was not a Gentile, and it wasn't written to a Gentile audience, to a Gentile ruler. This is directly related to God's kindness and reaching directly to the high priestly family to try to redeem what Annas had done. He was being kind to Annas' children.
And you know, he got some of them. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Redemption and hope. That's what God is. That's what he brings. We brought this to you today because we wanted to set the record straight. We wanted to tell you what we really see. And we wanted to also note that Jesus was Jewish and all of his followers were constantly reaching back to the Jewish people. So you too, reach out to your neighbors and tell them the truth, Jew and Gentile, but especially don't neglect your Jewish brothers and sisters. Tell them about Jesus because one day they're going to recognize him anyways, but we want everybody to recognize him as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords and come into the kingdom to come. Remember, you have a great and wonderful thing in front of you. Share it with the world because Jesus is worth it. We love you. We're thankful that you took the time to listen. If you've made it this far, please feel free to reach out to us, modernmindancientbook.org. That's the website. You can find us wherever podcasts are streaming. And we have a kind of a larger presence on YouTube. Thank you for being here. Chip, thank you for being here.
Hey, man, this is awesome stuff, isn't it?
May the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Turn his face towards you and bring you peace. Shalom.
God bless you all.